Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to unpack a moment that, well, it wasn't just a turning point for one person. It really shaped so much thinking for centuries after. We're diving into the story of Siddhartha Gautama, specifically the impact of those encounters he had, with old age, sickness, death, and then an ascetic. They're often called the four sights.
That's right. And the notes and excerpts you've got here, they really focus on these specific moments, these observations, and just how they completely flipped the world upside down for a prince who had been, well, very deliberately kept away from life's harsher side.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why. Why these particular sites? What was it about them that was so, I guess, explosive for him?
What were the core truths? Yeah.
Right. What did he actually see in those moments that just shattered that comfortable world he knew and, set him off on this completely new path?
Let's explore what each encounter really revealed.
So first, let's maybe set the scene a bit. Siddhartha's life inside the palace walls. I mean, the sources we have paint this picture of a world almost meticulously built to keep out any hint of suffering.
It sounds almost unreal.
It does. Like perpetual youth, perfect health, unending pleasure. It sounds beautiful, sure, but also kind of artificial, like a bubble.
Yeah, precisely that, a bubble. A really elaborate illusion, designed to keep him unaware, comfortable, maybe even easy to manage.
Right.
But reality, the way things actually are, it tends to push through eventually. These foresights weren't just like random things he happened to see on a trip outside. They were fundamental cracks appearing in that carefully built wall, that facade.
Okay, so the first crack, old age. He sees an old man. Now, for someone who literally only ever known young, vibrant people, strength, beauty, what was the gut realization that hit him there?
It was the sudden, really sharp understanding of impermanence. That's the core of it. He saw a body that wasn't vibrant anymore. It was fragile, declining. The truth hitting him wasn't just, people get old. It was deeper. It was everything changes. Beauty fades, strength goes. Nothing actually lasts forever.
Wow.
It was a direct hit against the stability. And frankly, the pleasure he'd always just assumed was the norm was permanent.
And his charioteer, Channa, he's there, right? And he confirms it. He basically says, yeah, this isn't some rare thing. This happens to everyone.
Exactly. And that confirmation that this wasn't just some unlucky person, but this is the universal destiny, that must have been profoundly unsettling.
Absolutely. Realizing it wasn't just happening to someone else over there, but that this was the future waiting for him, too. The prince.
Precisely. That validation, this isn't an exception. This is the rule for everyone that planted the first real seed of deep existential doubt.
Yeah.
It was the first undeniable proof that his beautiful palace world wasn't the full picture, that something huge was missing from how he understood life.
Okay. So old age cracks the illusion, shows him change is real. What came next? What chipped away even more at that perfect world?
Sickness. The second sight. He encountered someone just ravaged by disease.
Right.
And this revealed a different side of suffering, didn't it? It wasn't just the slow fade of age. It was intense physical agony. It was loss of control, helplessness, that kind of profound vulnerability.
Yeah, it really highlights how fragile health is, doesn't it? You can be strong one minute, completely laid low the next.
Exactly. Seeing this suffering body, unable to function properly, maybe dependent, it showed how pervasive pain is, how unpredictable physical suffering can be. It sort of hammered home that lesson of impermanence he got from old age, but added this dimension of unavoidable physical anguish.
And compared to his own life, always healthy, always protected.
It must have felt like stepping into a nightmare, a completely different reality. It showed him comfort and health weren't guarantees against pain. The big realization, life is vulnerable, suffering can hit anyone. Anytime.
Okay, now this third sight. The sources we looked at really emphasize this one. They call it the ultimate shattering of his illusion. Death. He saw a corpse being carried away.
This was it. The absolute undeniable endpoint. The first two sights, old age and sickness, they revealed change and pain within life.
Right, part of the process.
Yeah, but death. That was the complete stop. The irrefutable proof that everything eventually just ends. The core truth here. All life ceases. A finality that the other sites only hinted at.
For a mind that was, like you said, conditioned to expect things to just keep going, to expect abundance, this life of privilege,
Yeah.
facing that complete absence, that final stillness, I mean, it must have been terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Realizing his own inevitable end and the end of everyone he knew, everyone he loved.
Yeah.
Death is the total opposite of that palace illusion of endless pleasure and existence, isn't it? It's the one thing no amount of wealth, no amount of power can stop or let you escape.
True.
This sight, more than any other, really laid bare the universal problem of existence in its starkest form. It basically screamed out for an answer.
Okay, so after these three pretty devastating blows, impermanence, vulnerability to pain, and then the finality of death, he sees something different. The fourth sight, your notes call it a beacon of hope, the serene ascetic.
Yes, and this encounter was absolutely crucial. It was the turning point. It was the moment a different possibility emerged from under the crushing weight of all that suffering he'd just witnessed.
How so?
Well, here was someone who seemed to embody a kind of peace, a calm, that the palace, with all its riches, could clearly never provide. The core realization was huge. Maybe there is a path beyond all this suffering.
This figure,
Mm-hmm.
having basically nothing, living what looks like a hard life, yet radiating calm. It suggested something profound, right? That real peace isn't about external comfort.
Exactly. It's not found in things, but maybe through some kind of inner quest, through renunciation even. The ascetic represented a life chosen deliberately, not for gain or comfort, but dedicated to finding a higher truth, maybe a liberation from that very cycle of aging, sickness, and death he'd just woken up to. It gave Siddhartha a concrete alternative, a direction for all that deep unrest stirring inside him.
Okay, so let's pull it all together then. These four sites, they weren't just separate incidents. They were like a cumulative series of shocks, a catalyst. When you combine the shock of impermanence, the reality of suffering, the inevitability of death, what was the one single pivotal truth that finally clicked for Siddhartha?
The really profound insight that came out of all this was essentially all of conditioned existence. Life lived, chasing temporary pleasures, tied up in who we think we are, is fundamentally marked by suffering, or dukkha, as it's called.
Dukkha. Right.
And that the superficial comforts of the world, the very things his life had been built on, they're ultimately just inadequate. They can't shield you from this fundamental reality.
So it wasn't just about his potential suffering, but realizing this cycle, aging, sickness, death, it affects everyone, no exceptions.
Yes. Everyone, regardless of their status or wealth. And that true freedom wasn't about trying to avoid these things inside a palace wall.
Right.
It was about finding a way to transcend the entire cycle of this universal suffering.
Wow.
He understood the problem wasn't just his personal problem, it was a condition of existence itself for all beings. And this incredibly powerful realization, born from that clash between his sheltered life and these undeniable truths, that became the driving force, the unstoppable reason for his great renunciation.
Leaving everything behind.
Everything. The resolve to leave it all and go on a quest to find a real solution, not just for himself, but ultimately to help liberate all beings from this suffering.
So these four sites really did just completely shatter Siddhartha's carefully built world. They revealed these fundamental truths about life, about existence.
And pointed towards a path to liberation.
They were, in a way, like the seeds, weren't they? The seeds that grew into the Buddha's wisdom that people still turn to today.
In a very profound sense, yes. That's exactly what they were.
So thinking about this, given that aging, sickness, and death are universal things Siddhartha saw, things we all face, what does this deep dive maybe suggest about where real peace or freedom might be found in our own lives today? What illusions, like Siddhartha's palace, might we need to look beyond to find it?